The aged King Solomon gazed from his palace window, the golden sun casting long shadows across his opulent chamber. How did a man blessed with such unparalleled wisdom and divine favor, one who started with everything, make such a pivotal, life-altering error so early in his magnificent reign? Yet we begin not with his end, but with his glorious dawn. King Solomon began his reign with incredible promise, chosen by God to ascend to the throne of Israel. In 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 5, we read that the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream at Gibeon, asking, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Solomon's response defined his legacy. He didn't ask for wealth or long life, but humbly requested, as recorded in 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 9, "Give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil." God was greatly pleased, granting him not only unparalleled wisdom, but also promising riches, honor, and a long life. Though unfit, he remained faithful. Solomon's divinely granted wisdom was immediately put to the test. 2 women, harlots, came before him, both claiming to be the mother of the same living child. Their arguments were desperate, their pleas echoing through the throne room as advisors watched intently. Solomon, with calm authority, delivered his stark command: "Divide the living child in 2, and give half to one and half to the other." The court gasped, but the true mother's heart broke. "Please, my lord," she cried, tears streaming, "give the living baby to the other woman. Don't kill him." This event, recorded in 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 16 to 28, showcased his God-given discernment. The people of Israel marveled, realizing God's wisdom was truly with their king, solidifying his reputation across the land. But Solomon's most significant achievement, a testament to his initial devotion, was the construction of the temple in Jerusalem. His father David had longed to build it, and now Solomon fulfilled that sacred task. With the finest materials, cedar from Lebanon, pure gold, silver, and bronze, an architectural marvel rose, taking 7 years to complete. When the temple was finally finished, and God's glory descended like a cloud, Solomon led the nation in a powerful prayer of dedication. In 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 23, he prayed, "Lord, the God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven above or on earth below." It was a heartfelt affirmation of his commitment, a dwelling place for the divine among his people. Under Solomon's rule, Israel reached unprecedented heights of wealth, power, and influence. Jerusalem became a beacon of prosperity, attracting traders and rulers from all corners of the ancient world. The Queen of Sheba herself traveled a great distance, astounded by his wisdom and the grandeur of his kingdom. As she declared in 1 Kings chapter 10, verses 6 to 7, "Indeed, not even half was told me." His annual income in gold alone was staggering, and his magnificent ivory throne, overlaid with pure gold, was a symbol of unparalleled power. Solomon's reign was the zenith of Israel's glory, a kingdom unmatched in riches and wisdom, attracting the whole world to hear the wisdom God had put in his heart. The flickering oil lamps cast long, dancing shadows across the maps and parchments strewn across King Solomon's war room. His chief advisors, men of seasoned wisdom and strategic mind, stood before him, their faces etched with the weight of geopolitical realities. "The northern borders are secure, Your Majesty, thanks to the recent fortresses," one reported, "but the southern flank Egypt remains a formidable power. Their influence stretches far, and their armies are vast." Another added, "A strong ally to the south would secure our trade routes and deter opportunistic raiders from the deserts." Solomon listened, his gaze fixed on the sprawling map, tracing the Nile's path, a glint of strategic thought in his eyes. The whisper of a marriage alliance, a bond of blood and power with Pharaoh's daughter, began to circulate in the chamber, a pragmatic solution to a pressing strategic need. And so Solomon, the wisest of kings, dispatched his most esteemed envoys to the ancient land of Egypt. Their journey was one of grandeur, culminating in the opulent halls of Pharaoh's palace, a realm of towering pillars, intricate hieroglyphs, and dazzling wealth. There, amid a symphony of diplomatic pronouncements and the scent of exotic incense, negotiations for the hand of Pharaoh's daughter, Neferet, commenced. The terms were clear, the benefits undeniable, an unbreakable peace between 2 mighty kingdoms, unparalleled trade agreements, and Israel's prestige elevated to new, dizzying heights. This was more than a marriage. It was a strategic masterstroke, a testament to Solomon's worldly cunning, promising an era of unprecedented stability and prosperity for his people. The world watched, impressed by the audacious alliance. Yet, even amidst the triumph of statecraft, a faint echo of warning pierced the king's conscience. Later, in the quiet solitude of his personal study, ancient parchment scrolls lay open. Solomon's eyes drifted over familiar words, words inscribed by Moses himself, a divine blueprint for the kings of Israel. Asterisk, he must not take many wives, or his heart will be led astray. Asterisk echoed Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 17. And again, asterisk, do not intermarry with them. Do not give your daughters to their sons, or take their daughters for your sons, for they will turn your children away from following me to serve other gods. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 3 to 4. A flicker of unease, a pang of hesitation crossed his features. The weight of God's clear command was undeniable, acknowledged, if only for a fleeting moment, before the tide of ambition and political necessity swept it aside. Late into the night, Solomon paced his private chambers, the grand vision of his kingdom warring with the quiet voice of divine instruction. He was the wisest man, blessed by God. Surely he could navigate this delicate balance. He reasoned with himself. This was a political alliance, a necessary evil for the greater good of Israel. Pharaoh's daughter would live in her own palace, apart from the holy city. His own heart, so devoted to the Lord, would remain steadfast. Had not God granted him unparalleled wisdom for such complex decisions? This was simply shrewd diplomacy, not spiritual compromise. He convinced himself that his immense wisdom and the very favor of God, which had propelled him to such heights, would serve as an impenetrable shield against any spiritual straying. A subtle arrogance, a quiet belief in his own invincibility, began to take root. Jerusalem buzzed with a feverish energy. Architects and laborers toiled relentlessly on a magnificent new palace, commissioned specifically for Pharaoh's daughter, a grand edifice rising outside the hallowed walls of the city of David. Servants rushed through the streets, laden with silks and spices, preparing for a wedding procession of unprecedented scale. The air was thick with anticipation, the city's citizens marveling at the sheer opulence and the exotic allure of the coming Egyptian princess. Banners bearing the symbols of two great nations fluttered side by side, a vibrant testament to the strategic union. All of Israel prepared to welcome the foreign queen, unaware that with her arrival, the first subtle cracks in Solomon's unwavering devotion would begin to appear. The air shimmered with anticipation as the grand Egyptian procession snaked its way along the dusty road leading into Jerusalem. First, the rhythmic beat of foreign drums echoed, followed by the sight of gleaming bronze chariots, their wheels kicking up plumes of red earth. Tall, disciplined Egyptian guards, adorned with plumed helmets and intricate armbands, marched with an unyielding precision that spoke of Pharaoh's formidable power. Then came the exotic animals, sleek hunting dogs on jeweled leashes, and even a majestic, slow-gaited camel bearing a richly embroidered litter. Within, veiled and regal, sat Princess Nepheret, Pharaoh's own daughter. Her eyes, dark and curious, scanned the awestruck Israelite crowds, a silent testament to a world far removed from their own. Gasps rippled through the onlookers, for never had such a display of foreign splendor graced their holy city. The sounds, the sights, the sheer foreignness of it all announced a new era for Israel, a cultural richness that promised much, yet harbored unseen complexities. At the hallowed gates of Jerusalem, King Solomon, resplendent in his royal robes, awaited his bride. The meeting was a carefully orchestrated tableau of diplomacy and power. As Nepheret's litter halted, she emerged, a vision of dignity shrouded in fine linen and precious jewels, her face still partially veiled. Solomon stepped forward, his heart perhaps stirring with a mix of political triumph and burgeoning personal fascination. Their eyes met across the short distance, a spark of mutual respect, perhaps even a nascent admiration, passing between the young king and the foreign princess. "Welcome to Jerusalem, Princess Nepheret," Solomon's voice, deep and resonant, cut through the hushed reverence. May this union bring peace and prosperity to our nations. Her response, though soft, carried the weight of her lineage, a formal acknowledgment that sealed not just a marriage, but an alliance. This was more than a political maneuver. It was the genesis of a connection that would, in time, test the very foundations of Solomon's faith. The royal wedding that followed was a spectacle unlike any Jerusalem had witnessed. Within the lavish courtyards of Solomon's palace, Israelite and Egyptian customs subtly intertwined, a testament to the new alliance. Priests from both lands offered blessings, while musicians played melodies that blended the ancient sounds of the Nile with the sacred hymns of Zion. Feasting tables groaned under the weight of delicacies from two empires, and the air vibrated with joyous shouts and celebratory laughter. Solomon, observing the revelry, felt a surge of satisfaction. This marriage, a cornerstone of his foreign policy, cemented peace and elevated Israel's prestige on the world stage. The cheers of the crowd, the vibrant clothing, the rich tapestry of blended cultures, all contributed to a sense of unity, a triumphant moment. Yet beneath the surface of this grand celebration, an unseen current of compromise had begun to flow, subtle as a whisper, powerful as a tide. But even amidst the grandeur, a distinct separation was maintained. For Pharaoh's daughter, Solomon had built a magnificent new palace, not within the sacred walls of the city of David where the Ark of the Covenant resided, but just outside, on a prominent hill. The narrator reminds us, for Solomon knew that holy places were meant for the holy God, and that Jerusalem itself was sanctified ground. This seemingly practical arrangement, driven by reverence for Jerusalem's holiness, also subtly emphasized Neferet's foreignness. Settling into her dedicated palace, Neferet began to establish her own routines, her own comforts, surrounded by her Egyptian attendants. It was a beautiful, opulent dwelling, yet it stood apart, a quiet bastion of a different culture, a different spiritual landscape, already subtly isolating the king's heart from the pure devotion he had once proclaimed. Within the walls of her private chambers, Neferet meticulously recreated a piece of her homeland. Egyptian art adorned the walls, papyrus scrolls lay open on carved tables, and the gentle strumming of a foreign stringed instrument often filled the air. She surrounded herself with the sounds, sights, and traditions of her upbringing. Solomon, during his visits, would observe these elements with a mild amusement, an accepting nod. He saw no harm, perhaps even a certain charm, in her cultural expressions. Her presence, and the distinct flavor she brought, began to permeate the royal court, an exotic current flowing through the heart of Israel. What seemed like harmless cultural integration was, in fact, the insidious nature of cultural creep, a gentle, almost imperceptible paving of the way for deeper, more profound spiritual compromise. Deep within the lavish, yet secluded, palace built for Pharaoh's daughter, Princess Neferet found solace in the customs of her homeland. In a private garden, shielded by imported palms and fragrant blossoms, she performed a quiet ritual. Small, intricately carved idols of Egyptian deities, perhaps a benevolent Bastet, a watchful Horus, were arranged on a low stone altar. Incense, sweet and foreign, curled upwards, mingling with the scent of jasmine. Her posture was one of profound reverence, hands clasped, eyes closed, a faint murmur escaping her lips. This was not an act of defiance, but a sincere yearning for connection, a longing for the familiar comfort of her gods and the distant land she had left behind. Her heart, though finding affection in Jerusalem, still held a sacred space for the ancient ways of Egypt, and she yearned for a proper place to express that devotion. From a moonlit balcony of his own palace, overlooking the elegant structure of Neferet's dwelling, King Solomon watched. The soft glow of lamps from her chambers cast long shadows, and the faint, unfamiliar scent of her incense drifted on the night air. He saw her silhouette, still and devout, engaged in a worship alien to his own. A subtle unease stirred within him, a faint echo of God's commands. Do not intermarry with them, for they will turn your hearts after other gods. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 3-4. Yet as he observed, He also felt a deep affection for Neferet. He understood her longing, her need for familiar comfort in a foreign land. Could a king, blessed with such wisdom, truly be swayed by a single, devoted heart? His own heart was now a battleground between divine law and human affection, a silent conflict that would define his legacy. One sun-drenched afternoon, as they walked through Neferet's private garden, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves, she turned to Solomon. "My king," she began, her voice soft but clear, "your God is mighty, and his temple stands as a testament to his glory. I honor your devotion." Solomon listened, his gaze thoughtful. "But my heart, too, longs for the comfort of my own gods, as I knew them in Egypt. A simple altar, a quiet place of worship, where I might offer my prayers and remember my homeland. Would you grant me this, my Lord? It is a small thing, a personal need." Her earnest expression, the sincerity in her eyes, appealed directly to his compassion. Solomon found himself caught, torn between the love he felt for this woman and the clear, uncompromising law of the God who had given him everything. Could such a small concession truly lead astray the wisest king on earth? Dawn broke over Jerusalem, painting the temple gold, but in his vast throne room Solomon paced alone. The weight of Neferet's request pressed heavily upon him. He recalled his youthful prayer at Gibeon, asking for an understanding heart, not wealth or power. He remembered God's explicit warnings against foreign wives and their gods. But this is different, he argued with himself, his voice a whisper in the echoing hall. This is a political alliance, not a spiritual compromise. It is just one altar, for one wife. It will not affect my devotion to the Lord, nor the heart of my people. Surely my wisdom, granted by God himself, will protect me from straying. He clasped his head, the rising sun casting long, deceptive shadows that seemed to mock his certainty. He had built the greatest kingdom, a monument to God, and now, he convinced himself, he could manage this small, strategic bend in the path. The next morning, in the quiet intimacy of their chambers, Solomon faced Neferet. His expression was a mix of resolve and a subtle, unsettling weariness. "Your wish shall be granted, my princess," he said, his voice firm, yet lacking its usual joyful resonance. "A place of worship will be built for your gods, a testament to our enduring bond and the peace between our nations." Neferet's face lit with relief and gratitude, her smile radiant as she embraced him. Yet, even as her happiness filled the room, a subtle shadow fell over Solomon's heart. He had made his first major concession. He had chosen human affection and political expediency over divine command. Unseen, unheard, a hairline crack began to appear in the foundation of his unwavering devotion. The sun, once a symbol of God's favor over Jerusalem, now cast a muted glow upon a secluded hill, discreetly nestled near Princess Neferet's new palace. Here, away from the majestic, gold-laden sanctity of the temple, a different kind of construction began, not with the joyous shouts of craftsmen dedicating their labor to the Lord, but with the quiet, functional clatter of rough stones being laid. Workmen, perhaps with an uneasy silence, shaped a small, unadorned altar. It was a stark contrast to the grandeur Solomon had commanded for God's dwelling place, a humble structure, yet one burdened with an ominous significance. This location was chosen with calculated intent, out of sight, out of mind from the holy city, a deliberate attempt to compartmentalize faith, to contain the forbidden. But the very act of its erection represented the first, tangible crack in Solomon's unwavering devotion. As the days passed, a subtle disquiet began to ripple through the bustling streets of Jerusalem. The news, carried on hushed whispers, spoke of the new structure on the distant hill. "Have you heard?" one merchant murmured to another. "A place for the Egyptian gods, they say." Concerned glances were exchanged, eyes darting towards the glorious temple of the Lord, then towards the faint, new outline on the horizon. Even the priests, usually steadfast in their service, cast troubled, knowing looks, their hearts heavy with foreboding. They understood the ancient warnings, the clear commands against turning aside to other gods. How could a king, blessed with such wisdom and favor, permit such a thing on Israelite soil? A quiet unease, a subtle sense of betrayal, began to spread like a shadow among the faithful. High above the city, in a quiet place of prayer overlooking the gleaming temple and the burgeoning forbidden altar, sat Nathan the prophet. His aged face was etched with profound sorrow, his gaze fixed on the distant structure that, to others, might seem a minor concession. But Nathan saw beyond the stones and mortar. He saw the thin end of the wedge, the subtle breach in the covenant that would inevitably widen. He knew the cost of such compromises, the long, tragic road they paved. A silent prayer, heavy with grief for the king he had known since childhood, escaped his lips. A plea for a heart that had begun to stray. A lament for the spiritual storm he knew was gathering on the horizon. The very air around him seemed to thicken with the gravity of what was unfolding. Late into the night, in the quiet solitude of his private study, King Solomon wrestled with an internal turmoil he had once believed himself immune to. A faint unease stirred within him, a still small voice that echoed the ancient warnings, challenging the very core of his decision. He clutched his chest, a fleeting look of regret crossing his features, a glimpse of the wisdom he had asked God for. But then, with a resolute, almost stubborn expression, he pushed it away. "It is but a small thing," he rationalized, pacing the polished floor. "A political necessity, a gesture of love. My heart remains devoted to the Lord." Yet, with each dismissal, the vibrant spiritual connection he had once cherished felt a little more distant, the presence of God a little less immediate. His heart, subtly hardened, chose to believe its own cleverness over divine counsel. As dawn broke, casting long, pale shadows across the land, the newly built altar on the hillside became the stage for its first sacrilegious act. Princess Neferet, surrounded by her Egyptian attendants, performed a ritual offering to her foreign gods. Smoke, fragrant with exotic incense, curled upwards into the cool morning air, a stark contrast to the pure sacrifices offered daily at the temple. From the distant heights of his palace, King Solomon watched, a silent, conflicted witness. No words were spoken, only the haunting chants of the Egyptian ritual carried on the wind, and Solomon's heavy sigh, a silent acknowledgement of the profound line he had allowed to be crossed. A precedent had been set, a forbidden seed planted on holy ground, destined to bear bitter fruit. He knelt in his private prayer room, the scent of cedar and old parchment filling the air. This chamber, once a conduit for divine wisdom, now felt different. King Solomon closed his eyes, striving for the intimate connection he once shared with the Lord, the vibrant presence that had flooded his soul at Gibeon. But tonight, the familiar warmth was absent. His prayers, once fervent rivers flowing effortlessly to the heavens, now felt like stagnant pools, their surface barely rippled by his efforts. A subtle chill had crept into his spirit, a quiet emptiness where God's tangible favor once resided. Had the air grown thin, or had a veil unseen yet undeniable fallen between him and the Almighty? He knew deep in his heart that something had shifted, a vibrant chord now muffled, a light dimmed. The cost of his first compromise was not in immediate thunder, but in a gradual, melancholic spiritual distance. The subtle shift in Solomon's spiritual connection soon manifested in his rule. In the bustling throne room, council meetings unfolded with the usual pomp, yet a different spirit animated the king. No longer did he preface every major decision with extended prayer or profound spiritual counsel. His judgments, still sharp and discerning, now leaned heavily on political expediency, on the shrewd calculations of statecraft, rather than the pure, unwavering guidance of the Most High. The humble heart that had asked for discernment was slowly being replaced by a subtle pride in his own unmatched intellect. He was the wisest, after all. Why seek counsel for what his own brilliant mind could solve. The divine wisdom, once his anchor, began to be overshadowed by his own cleverness, a dangerous reliance on human understanding that would slowly, inexorably steer his kingdom off course. But what began as a single, necessary compromise, a political alliance sealed with a foreign wife, did not end there. Oh no, the path laid bare by the Egyptian marriage was a treacherous, slippery slope. This first concession became the precedent, the crack in the wall through which countless other temptations would flood. The narrator reveals the tragic truth. Solomon, who began with one foreign princess, would eventually amass 700 wives, princesses all, and 300 concubines. Each new alliance, each additional wife, brought with it the gods of Moab, Ammon, Sidon, and the Hittites. This initial step, seemingly small and strategically sound, opened the door to a spiritual landslide, pulling the wisest king into the very idolatry God had warned against. Can you see how one deviation, no matter how small, can set a course for utter ruin? Fast forward many years. Picture an elderly Solomon, his once keen eyes now heavy with the weight of years and profound regret. He sits alone in his magnificent palace, amidst treasures beyond measure, gold glittering on every surface, exotic perfumes wafting through the air. Yet his expression is one of utter weariness, a deep-seated sorrow that even his boundless wealth cannot assuage. A faint whisper escapes his lips, an echo of the words he would pen in his later years. Meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. This fleeting glimpse into his future underscores the heartbreaking truth. The path he initiated with that first compromise, the one he rationalized as a small political necessity, led him to this very despair, this profound emptiness that overshadowed all his earthly achievements. So we return to Jerusalem, where the glorious temple of the Lord still gleams, a testament to Solomon's initial devotion. But now, in the distant hills, a humble, almost forgotten altar stands, the first sanctuary built for Princess Neferet's gods. It is a silent, stark reminder of the moment a king, blessed beyond measure, began to stray. Solomon's story, particularly this tale of his first compromise, is a potent lesson for each of us. How often do we rationalize our own small deviations, our necessary compromises, believing they won't truly affect our devotion to God? But as Solomon tragically learned, even the smallest crack can lead to the collapse of the greatest foundation. May we learn from his mistakes and strive to keep our hearts undivided, vigilant against the subtle erosions that can lead even the wisest among us far from the path of our Creator.